We have come to the end of our conference this year, which is exciting and a little sad because we've had a great 2 days together. We do hope you fill out those evaluations. We got better from last year. We'll be even better next year, so we appreciate you filling those out. We like to end our conferences, and we've done this the last couple of years with a session called Personal Stories about the impact that vaccine-preventable diseases have on people's lives. I know that I personally am very truly honored to have the privilege of introducing the next couple of brave and courageous speakers for this last session of our 2024 Missouri Immunization Conference. They are joining us to share their very personal, very powerful stories of how vaccine-preventable diseases have impacted their lives and the lives of their families. I want to make a special note that the content of this session can sometimes be difficult for people to hear, so please know that it is okay to take a break, step away, and come back when you're ready. With that said, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Vivian Huang, and she is coming right up. Vivian is a dual-trained physician in internal medicine and preventive medicine and public health. She has spent a large part of her career in clinical medicine and public health, with experiences with Doctors Without Borders, Partners in Health, the Charles B. Wang Community Health Center, and the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. She has spoken openly about her global health experiences on The Moth, which is a nonprofit group based in New York City dedicated to the craft of storytelling. Vivian is a long-term hepatitis B expert, advocate, and survivor. Hepatitis B can be prevented. It can be prevented with vaccination, as we've learned today. Vivian believes that we can have a world without hepatitis B. In her free time, Vivian enjoys the great outdoors with her partner and her doggie and lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Vivian, thank you for being here to share your story.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, Nicole, and thank you to the Missouri Immunization Conference for inviting me here. This is my first time in Missouri State, and you have a beautiful green state. I come from the desert. It's very brown. So when I got to the airport, I was like, wow, this is green. This is amazing. So it's been really nice. And Missourians are so friendly, and I've loved meeting everyone here at the conference. So I hope this will be not my last time, but this is the first time that I'm here, and I hope to engage with all of you continuously. I was invited because I'm here to tell my story about hepatitis B, my personal experience. I've struggled to tell this story because throughout my life I've faced a lot of stigma around hepatitis B. But in the last couple of years, I thought, if I don't do this now, when am I going to do this? So I started to tell my story, and I've gotten invited back again to tell my story publicly. What I will share is my personal journey, and my plea to all of you is to get people vaccinated against hepatitis B. I've often heard people say, well, we don't have hepatitis B, we've never seen it. Well, that's a lot due to vaccinations, but also by the time you do see hepatitis B, it's probably too late for that person. So please get them vaccinated. I'm also really glad that this session is after brunch and after eating, because the first thing I'm going to share with you is something about poop. So I don't, most days I don't really think about hepatitis B anymore. It is only when I come to conferences or when there's a great session, today that was on hepatitis B, that I really start thinking about hepatitis B and how it's affected my life. But very recently, I was a poop donor. So in Phoenix, Arizona, there is a place where you can donate your poop to actually help those people that have recurrent C. difficile infection. This is a nasty GI bug. I have a very close friend who has this illness. So I thought, let me go donate my poop. Maybe I can help make somebody better, because if they find that you have normal flora and what they need in the poop, they make it into a pill called Faust, VOWST, which has been FDA approved. So if you have good, healthy poop, they want your poop. So I went and I was donating, and I'd made all the tests, and I'd passed. And then they said, well, you got to do a blood test. And I was getting up very early to go to the center to actually do my business there. But I thought, hey, this is, for the benefit of a lot of people, so let me do that. And I had my blood test drawn. I didn't think anything of it. I said, yeah, I'm just going to be this poop donor, which is, I thought it was just a, fun science project for myself. And then I get a call from the center, and they're like, we need you to come in. And this is about 6 months ago. And they show me my lab test. And so my surface antibody is positive, and my core antibody is positive. I was infected a long time ago when I was 18, 19. But I've cleared the infection for now. But what I felt when I was there was all the stigma again. Because all of a sudden, people were looking at me like I was dirty. And they were telling me that we no longer want your poop. And I was really, really disappointed. And but I thought, wait, I'm immune controlled, right? Because Dr. Qureshi was just teaching me that I'm immune controlled. So I don't have chronic infection, but I do have core antibody and surface antibody, because at some point in my life, I was exposed to hepatitis B. And so I walked out of that center kind of with my head hanging down, and I felt so ashamed, and I felt so bad about myself. I sat in a car and I really just didn't feel great. But I said, I got to do something about this. So I've been trying to contact the center and also their pharmaceutical team to try to find out why they don't want my poop. I'm still waiting for an answer. So if I get an answer, I will let you guys know what they say, and certainly I'll be in touch. But that moment brought me back to the time when I was 18 or 19. I just started college. I was a freshman in college. I had no real medical knowledge yet. I was a bio major, and all my friends were donating blood, and so I said, I'm going to go donate blood too. And that's when I got a letter again. So, these phone calls and these letters, I don't really like them, but I got this letter, and it said that your blood has been exposed to hepatitis B. And so I was really scared, and I didn't know what to do with that. I was a young college student, freshman in college. So I went to my school health center, and at that time, the nurse there, I would say that her explanation to me wasn't very clear. It made me more confused. And she also made me, again, feel really stigmatized, and made me feel really ashamed of myself that I did something that somehow caused me to become infected. It really kind of changed the course of my life. And, that person that I was that day before I got that letter, that person died. So this is a new person. And, there's a famous poet, Rumi, and he said, the wound is the place where the light comes in. And from that moment on, it really changed the course of my life. I ultimately went on, I graduated from college, I went to medical school. I've done 2 residencies. I've had the opportunity to work for Doctors Without Borders. I've been part of the Ebola response in 2015. And I think that experience connects me closer to the people. When I was in Sierra Leone, I was doing Ebola work. We were trying to fight the world's worst Ebola outbreak. But I also had the opportunity to look at their vaccination records. I was able to go to clinics. And then I started hearing stories about hepatitis B. And there's also quite a need to try to treat and screen and vaccinate those people in West Africa. And Dr. Qureshi mentioned 7% prevalence of hepatitis B in Africa. I've had the opportunity to work in Syria. I was sent to Syria by Doctors Without Borders 3 years after the war had started. The war is still happening in Syria right now. And there too, there's still hepatitis B. We know that over 300 million people in the world are chronically infected with hepatitis B, and the largest burdens are really from the southern hemisphere, which is in Asia and Africa. We have over 300 million people in the US, so that's about the same number of all the people in America. While I have cleared the infection, I'm not chronically infected, so I don't need to be on tenofovir or Vemlidy. But there is still in the back of my mind, what is going to happen later on down the road for me? Because while I'm immune controlled, I have surface antibody positive, I'm core antibody positive, I do my best to stay healthy. There is a possibility down the road, if I get a diagnosis that requires me to be on chemo or steroids or immune modulators, there are some instances where my hepatitis B that's sleeping, that's immune controlled, it could be reactivated. So that is something that I think about because I'm getting older now. I'm headed toward the 5th decade of my life, and I think about that more and more. And the one thing I'll say is that I was born in the Washington, D.C., raised right outside of Washington, D.C. I was born before the universal birth dose was available. So I was one of those people that fell through the cracks. And so in my infancy, in my childhood, in my adolescence, in my early adulthood, I didn't get vaccinated. There were plenty of opportunities where I could have been vaccinated. That didn't happen. So my plea to all of you is when you see a patient that comes in that needs that hepatitis B vaccine, we have a universal vaccination recommendation now for anybody aged 19 to 59. Please get them vaccinated. It's a vaccine-preventable disease. I'm up here telling you my story because what I went through and what I continue to go through is something I don't want anybody else to go through. It was one of the main reasons why I went to medical school. I felt so horrible and I felt so bad about myself, but I said to myself, let's turn that negative into a positive. Let's do something about that. It just, to this day, I still think about what would my life be if I hadn't been infected? Then maybe I wouldn't have gone on to do some of those things. And so sometimes a bad thing becomes a good thing. And then I think the last thing that I really want to share with all of you, which is something that I heard from a national youth poet laureate. Her name is Amanda Gorman, and she's incredibly powerful. And it's, if you guys who know me know that I love quotes, because if you write me an email, there's always a quote at the bottom of my email. And I want to just share this quote because I think we're going through a time not only in our country, but also in the world. There's a lot of turmoil, and there is a lot of unrest, and there's a lot of stress. And I really just want to leave you all with this because this is the thing that keeps me going every day. And what I want to read to you is, because I kind of butcher quotes a lot of times, but to anyone out there, I only ask that you care before it's too late, that you live aware and awake, that you lead with love in hours of hate. There's always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. And I know that all of you out there are beacons of light and are vaccine champions. And I know that we can live in a world that's hepatitis free, but also in a world that is free of diseases that are preventable by vaccines. So thank you so much for inviting me to this conference. I've had a really great time. I've really enjoyed meeting all of you, and I hope to come back. And and be part of this again. You've got an amazing group of people here. So thank you. Thank you very much for letting me share my story.
We thank Vivian for sharing her story with all of us today. Our next panelist is Charlie Hinderliter. I see him making his way. Charlie is a flu survivor, a flu advocate, and a storyteller. At 38, his encounter with influenza A turned his life upside down, evolving into a battle for survival. He has reclaimed that experience by becoming a cautionary tale to educate others about the seriousness of influenza and the importance of vaccination. Despite initially underestimating the flu's potential impact, Charlie now speaks about the need for annual vaccination. His story, covered by local and national media, is a powerful reminder of the flu's indiscriminate nature and the critical role vaccinations play in protecting individuals and communities. Now, Charlie shares his story far and wide, advocating for vaccination through organizations like Families Fighting Flu, Voices for Vaccines, and the Missouri Immunization Coalition. In his day job, Charlie is a senior vice president of government affairs at St. Louis REALTORS. Charlie, thank you for being here to share your story.
It's always great to have the key qualification is being a dumbass. Because I nearly died from a vaccine-preventable illness, and that's just not a great combination of words. And Nicole said I could say 2 bad words, so that was one. I want to start just by giving you a moment in February of 2018 during this experience. I'd had an esophageal ulcer. I learned a lot of new words through this, but I still don't fully understand it, so if I get something wrong, sorry. Because a pill had been trapped in my throat for a couple of days. Because it turns out, my esophagus had atrophied. I didn't know it could do that. But turns out when you're intubated, that's a thing I learned later. So I was taken down to do a swallow test, but I was too weak to stand. I'd lost 40 pounds and a lot of muscle, so I couldn't stand on my own. So it took all the strength I had just to stay mostly upright while doing this test. And then got back in the wheelchair, started a coughing fit, which is pretty common at this point because my lungs had been wrecked. As it turns out, not being able to breathe causes anxiety. Again, something new I'd learned. And that started triggering panic attacks. And this was the first panic attack where I urinated and pissed myself in the wheelchair. And if telling this story can prevent that for somebody else, that's what I do. I don't like telling this story. But if I can prevent further dumbassery, that's 2, I'm going to do that. Because while this experience was mostly unbelievably boring to live through, if it can be a tool for you to help convince your patients to get the influenza vaccination, I want to be a resource to you because you guys are doing great work. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Charlie Hinderliter. I'm the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for St. Louis REALTORS. My job is to help make people smart on policy. But, you know, I was a little ignorant of some things I wish I knew back in the beginning of 2018. I'm ABD on a PhD in political science and have been for 15 years. My point here is I'm not a moron. I actually am an intelligent human being. At the time, I was a normal, healthy 38-year-old. The worst health issue I had was mild exercise-induced asthma. I'm just a normal dude who, to my knowledge, had never gotten a flu shot as an adult. I didn't have any opposition to it. It was just one that I didn't get around to it or didn't feel it was important, thought that was for the elderly and the young, just didn't think that was for me. Gotta tell you, I really wish I got that shot. So beginning of January 2018, normal guy. End of January 2018, I'm in a medically induced coma and they've told my wife to start preparing the funeral, and I'm scheduled for ECMO. So I've told this story off and on over the last 6 years. I've never actually done it live to a group. So I got back from a conference in Jefferson City in mid-January of 2018. That night, I started feeling bad, getting sick. A couple days later, my wife starts feeling sick too. We go to the doctor on Tuesday. We're both diagnosed with influenza A. She gets Tamiflu because it's been under 48 hours for her, but it hasn't been for me, so I don't. 2 days later, I'm really getting worse. We go back to the doc. The family practitioner sends us to the ER. What we didn't know then is that she saw signs of sepsis. The ER sent me home. Yeah, I'm not happy about that one either. I will say the hospital did a phenomenal job of taking care of me. The people there absolutely saved my life, but that one I'm a little salty about still. Friday night into Saturday morning, I've been sick for a week. Something's seriously wrong. We go to the ER. I'm in a medically induced coma within 15 minutes. The last thing I remember is, I don't know if it was an IV or a line or something was being put in. It's my last memory for 12 days. I spent 10 days in a medically induced coma. Hold on, I got the list of what the hell went wrong. So we started with influenza A, and I don't understand all this, but my primary doc sent it to me. Influenza A turned into influenza pneumonia, complicated by sepsis and septic shock, coexistent bacteremia, toxic shock syndrome, respiratory failure, adult respiratory distress syndrome, multi-organ failure, including liver, heart, and kidneys. That sounds bad. I was intubated and on a ventilator. I was on dialysis, and I was scheduled to go on ECMO because my heart was failing. Thankfully, I turned a corner, and I did not have to go on ECMO. I started to get better. My friends and family have as weird a sense of humor as I do. So I was on paralytics while I was in a coma. And at some point, things start to move, shall we say? So they did start a betting pool. They called it Poopapalooza. Austin, the nurse, did win the pool. My wife and our friend Kelly, I believe, still annually celebrate this. They invited me to the Facebook event the first year, and I was like, I really don't need that invite again. Thanks, guys. So that's just weird. But after 10 days, I came out of the coma on a Tuesday. I have no memory until that Thursday. They had to explain to me repeatedly what happened. Apparently, I kept not remembering it. I'd been messing with me and telling me weird shit, but I didn't. Oops, sorry, that was 3. But that first memory I've got was from a Thursday, nearly 2 weeks after going to the hospital, and just being very overwhelmed by what had just happened. Not in a good way. The next day was overwhelming because of the outpouring of love and support that I'd gotten from so many people. All right, I need to go back to the weird, funny stuff. Thank you. What my family didn't tell me is I was not out of the woods when I woke up. Those lying bastards. All right, that's better. Okay. So I didn't find out for months that like I was not out of the woods. I was just like, nah, I woke up, we're good, we're moving. I mean, I was moving in the right direction. But you know, making a will at that point probably wouldn't have been a bad idea. Did that afterwards. But it was still serious. I ended up having surgery a couple times. One, to insert a feeding tube, because again, esophagus atrophied. I had an empyema, which is really gross. So I have forgotten what that means and don't want to look it up again. And had 3 drainage tubes and surgery to scrape out some nasty stuff. But for weeks, I heard the word empyema, and every time I heard that, I was like, I could go for an empanada. So like for the last 6 years, every time I see empanada on the menu, I'm like, nope, getting that. So that's just a weird side effect of this whole illness. In the end, I spent 58 days in the hospital, and I know because I was very bored by the end. I'm a bright individual. I'm proud of that. But they were very worried of what would I look like coming out of this? Would it be me? And early on, I had difficulty talking. And so I remember a doc asking me, what's causing you pain? So I poured it in my wife because I think I'm hilarious. And 1, she was pissed, but 2, she's like, no, that's him. He's still in there. It was 58 days in the hospital. It was 3 weeks living in the same nursing home as my grandmother, which is just a weird sentence. But hey, family got a twofer. Every time they came to visit, they got to visit 2 of us. So we got that going. And I got discharged from the nursing home 2 days before I turned 39, which is, again, a weird sentence. In June, I was able to start working part-time, and I returned to full-time work in August. There are still permanent side effects that I deal with that at this point I mostly take for granted. I was at a conference in Kansas City earlier this week and was talking to one of our realtor members who was like, I think you were in the room next to me. And I'm like, it's weird, why is that? She's like, were you sick yesterday? I was like, no, why? She's like, were you sick the day before that? It's like, no, why? Because I forget that I make god-awful noises in the morning because I've been dealing with postnasal drip for 6 years. And every morning I'm like coughing and choking and vomiting phlegm. And it sounds like a velociraptor from Jurassic Park. It's god-awful. My wife really doesn't like it. I really don't like it, to be clear, either. But it's just something I take for granted that it has become normal for me, but is not normal. So that was just a weird thing from this week. It's a story that, super boring to live through. I think it was much harder on my family than it was on me. And to be clear, I don't recommend my side either. But my wife was told to start planning a funeral. I had my father and one of my brothers that had to fly in because they were told they may have to say goodbye. So what you do is important. If my story can be helpful to you as a cautionary tale to tell you, the people that you deal with, get the damn flu shot. Sorry, that was for. Get the flu shot. I want to be a resource to you because you guys are doing incredibly important work, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Our final panelist, her name is Maria Young. And unfortunately, Maria was unable to join us in person today due to an unexpected medical event. But she has shared with us a video produced by Johns Hopkins Medicine about her incredible story. And we're going to watch that in just 1 second. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Maria. In 2021, Maria became a severe COVID-19 and ECMO survivor after spending over 4 months at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. ECMO stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Boy, I thought I'd get through that better. An extreme form of life support. After her discharge, Maria established a nonprofit called Maria's Miracle, a 501c3 dedicated to funding critical care medical training and supporting families and patients facing ECMO treatment or recovery from prolonged ICU stays. She continues to battle long COVID and the after effects of her time in the ICU. Maria now works as a vaccine advocate to increase awareness about the seriousness of COVID-19 and the importance of vaccination by sharing the details of her journey. Let's watch together now.
What stands out most was the first text that I got that said, "When do you call 911?" And I was panicking because I knew in my soul that it was COVID. And then it was just a roller coaster of, oh my God, after oh my God.
I don't remember going to Hopkins. I never heard of ECMO until I woke up. I was completely sedated from November 13th at night until the end of January.
6 o'clock, I get a call from the doctor, and she says, she's going down pretty quick. We have to put her in ECMO. I did not know what ECMO was. So I said, what do you mean? It's the highest level of life support. And we need to do it now, because if not, we will not have tomorrow. And it just freaked me out.
I overcame a lot of obstacles in my journey. 69 days on ECMO, which is the longest ECMO run at Hopkins that has been successful. I did all the right things. I stayed home most of the time, was around very few people in safe situations, and I shouldn't have gotten sick. I didn't have a heart condition or an autoimmune disorder. Like, I was normal and active and young and careful.
Maria, I walked in and you had no lung function and it was the 40th day. And I looked at Bo and said, are we out of our minds? 7 weeks in bed, she's not gonna make it. Up until COVID, the average VV ECMO was on VV ECMO for 240 hours. That's 10 days. Up until COVID. Okay, so 10 days. Now we're multiplying that by something like 3 to 6.
I think there are many institutions who would just say, right, I mean, Glenn, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but like at the 1 month mark, if there's no sign of recovery, it's sort of policy or protocol to communicate to the family that everything has been done. And I think everyone else would agree it would be reasonable to stop.
We were starting to have those conversations with her family that maybe this is not going to be working. This is not going to turn out well.
And I can hear my yelling and screaming. And I said, please don't let this light die. She has so much to give. But I keep playing in my head. She was in a good hospital, one of the top 3 hospitals, maybe in the world. And I knew that Maria was a fighter. So I talked to her every afternoon, and the nurses were so kind. They would put her phone to Maria's ear every day, just, Maria, breathe, please. And you know how to breathe because this is what yoga does. And I said, I'm breathing with you. I'm breathing twice. And for a while, I was hyperventilating because I felt like I had to do double breathing. A lot of people were doing that with me.
COVID was really hard for everybody. And I think the isolation and not having visitors made it 10 times worse. They really relied on us to communicate with them. And so we were calling them every day, even if updates were not anything different from the day before. It seems to have really helped them.
From what I know now, these doctors, like, they fought for you, and the nurses fought for you every day. They're talking to your family. They become part of your family.
They make it or break your day as a patient. And I think Maria was very lucky because she had angels. I remember when I met her in person, Julie says, every time you call, I just looked up at the ceiling and I cried with you. I was just so upset because you couldn't be here. So I will touch Maria's head. You were talking, I will touch, and I said, this is Mom.
These aren't just numbers on a screen or medications that I'm giving. Like, these are real people that you are giving the chance to survive.
I think also too, in a really, really dark time, she gave us hope. At the end of the day, when you have someone that has withstood as much as she's gone through, that's what I think as a team at this hospital, we needed some hope. And Maria, you definitely gave us hope.
Not only that, Maria has really shifted our thinking as what was possible through the COVID era, as far as how many days can we allow patients to be on ECMO, and what are the possibilities, and can they survive? So, Maria, keep on doing fantastic, doing what you're doing. We all love you.
So today we're back at Hopkins to visit some of my care team. I've been home for 2 months after 130 days here at Hopkins, so I'm excited for them to see how far I've come. So I got to meet a lot of the doctors and nurses from the first ICU when I was on ECMO. And they said nobody ever comes back to see them. And I just, for me, I wanted them to see what they've been fighting for over a year, what they've given up their own lives for. And they were super grateful. And it was just really special. Like, I'd never met these people, but you have this connection with them that, it's pretty amazing.
Whenever someone says, hey, Glenn, if you had to do it all over again, would you be a doctor? I want you to know that what you give to us makes our entire life. And when we participate in your care, and you survive when no one would have thought you would, you make our profession almost a gift from God.
I have to remind myself sometimes not to be mad when I can't do what I could do a year ago. I heard from somebody that it takes a year for your body to recover from just being intubated. And I was intubated for 80, 100 days. Now I have to give in to the fact that I can't go to the bathroom by myself, that I can't feed myself, that I can't change the channel on the TV. Surrender's become like my mantra. Like I'm not giving up, but I have to give in to my circumstances right now. My goal now, I'm going to deal with the mental health part of it, and the emotional part of it is helping others. COVID is not going to take me down. There's a light at the end of the tunnel that I want people to see.
Incredible. I had the honor and privilege of meeting Maria a few weeks ago when our team was out in Philadelphia at the National Conference for Immunization Coalitions and Partnerships. And it was wonderful to get to meet and talk with her. And Maria was so excited to get to come to Missouri and share her story with you all in person. Since she wasn't able to be here in person, she sent along a few thoughts, which I am honored to share with you now. So, in Maria's words, and I'm gonna put her up for you all to see. Maria says, "The video you just watched is a summary of what severe COVID-19 looked like for those of us who were severely impacted by a virus we knew little about at the time. The story has continued for me for the last 3 years and has changed my life in every way possible. And I was one of the lucky ones. I had hoped to be there with you to share how the story continued. Unfortunately, an unexpected health event prevented me from traveling, but I wanted to share these few thoughts with you. My story is a reminder that regardless of age, good health, and access to medical care, respiratory viruses can impact anyone in unexpected ways. We need to do all we can to prevent severe illness through vaccination and other means. The long-term impact can change your quality of life for the long term. I started speaking out about my story at the height of the pandemic because not many of us made it out of the hospital to share what it had been like. I went through drug withdrawals, ICU delirium, severe muscle atrophy, and isolation. Some days, I really don't know how I did it. I remember waking up in February 2021 and seeing on the TV how 3 COVID vaccines were available and being administered. When I had been sedated, there were none. I remember feeling a sense of relief that others would be spared what myself and my family were enduring. One of my first questions when I woke up was, who else did I get sick? The path was hard and long, but I remained so grateful for how it changed the course of my life. I've developed the most special relationships with members of my medical team, fellow survivors, new colleagues, and the vaccine community. I am now able to work full-time in vaccine advocacy and also started a 501c3 nonprofit organization for ECMO families called Maria's Miracles. I encourage all of you, this is my words, to visit and learn more about Maria's Miracle at www.mariasmiracle.org. Let me jump back to Maria's final words. Physically, I've recovered more than ever expected. Not 100%, but pretty close. My lungs somehow showed no signs of COVID about a year after hospital release. As you close out the final afternoon of your conference, I want to thank all of you for the work you're doing in Missouri. It's hard, and it's never ending, but it is so important. Please feel free to reach out directly if there are any questions you have. I wish you safe travels, as you make your way home. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that we wish Maria all the very best on her road to healing and recovery. So what I'd like to do is first say a big thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your very incredible stories of your resiliency and your advocacy. At this time, I'd like to open it up for I'd like to bring our two panelists back up, and we will open it up for any questions from the audience. Our panelists are very open to your questions, but I do encourage you to be respectful, and they will answer those questions that they feel comfortable with.
All right, I see one question in the back there. It's coming to you with the microphone.
This is for Charlie. When you visited like your primary care provider, did they actually do a recommendation for flu, or did that not come up?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't remember ever declining it, so I don't know if it was one of those
Right.
where it's like, hey, you should do that at some point. It was like, sure, yeah, and just ignored it.
So if you had a strong recommendation, or he's like, I'm recommending you get the flu today while you're here.
Probably would have helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions for our wonderful panelists? Right there.
This question is for Vivian. So did you ever experience any symptoms after your diagnosis, or would you be able to talk a little bit more about how it changed your life?
Thank you for that question. I was in biology courses when I was in college, and I recall probably maybe like one of the semesters I was feeling a little tired, and then my father at that time, he had come to school to pick me up over the weekend, and he had noticed, he was like, oh, your eyes are like a little bit yellow, but I didn't like think anything of it. I was a little bit more tired than usual, and I thought it was just maybe like one of my classes was very stressful, but I like didn't think that it would be, I had, no clue that. And now looking back on it many years later, with medical training, I was like, it was really mild, my symptoms, and I thought it was just college. How it changes my life is, I think every time I see a patient in front of me, there's an empathy that happens. And I think there was a woman over here that talked about love and kindness and how that's really important. And, we are a community, we are a village, we are a tribe, we are the tribe of human people. And doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, let's celebrate our differences and love each other, because life is very sacred and we don't walk this earth for very long. And let's do it in a good way. Let's make some impact in a positive way and love one another and be kind to one another. That's, I think, how it's really changed my life. Thank you for your question.
Do we have any other questions for Vivian or Charlie? Going once, going twice.
All right. So we hope that this final session and these stories energize you around the work that we all do every day to promote immunizations and their importance. These are the real faces and stories and families behind the vital work that we're doing in immunizations every day. Our goal always for this session is that it's helped you to connect on a personal level with the reason that we all wake up every day to do this mission critical work. I want to extend my sincerest gratitude to both Vivian and Charlie, and to Maria, who we wish all the best. Thank you so much for being here to share with us.